Good afternoon. The first item of business this afternoon is portfolio questions. The first portfolio is Deputy First Minister Responsibilities, Economy and Gaelic. Members wishing to ask a supplementary question should press the request to speak buttons during the relevant question. Question 1 has not been lodged. Question 2, Marie McNair, who joins us remotely.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government how it's supporting social enterprises.
Deputy First Minister Kate Forbes.
The Scottish Government fully recognises the importance of social enterprises and their valuable contribution to Scotland's economy. Investing in social enterprise is crucial for our vision of progressing towards an economy that is fairer, greener and one that has inclusive growth at its heart. Funding for the sector has been protected at £6.2 million for next year.
Marie McNair.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that answer. Crafting Together, a social enterprise in my constituency of Clydebank and Mulcahy, has done amazing work providing employment opportunities for those with additional support needs, but more still can be done to improve the rates of employment. Can the Cabinet Secretary advise what action can be taken to improve employment rates for those with additional support needs? And would the Cabinet Secretary be willing to come to Clydebank to meet with Crafting Together to discuss what they have on offer?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, organisations like Crafting Together, as Marie McNair has said, are doing great work in supporting those with additional support needs to find and stay in employment. And I'm sure that the Minister for Employment would be delighted to meet with Crafting Together to hear more about their work as the lead minister on these matters. We are committed to halving the disability employment gap and supporting disabled people and those with additional support needs into employment. I commend Crafting Together for all that they do in that regard.
Thank you. Question 3, Michelle Thompson.
To ask the Scottish Government what opportunities it has identified to grow Scotland's economy following Tartan Week 2025.
Deputy First Minister.
Well, the First Minister's visit to the United States for Tartan Week focused on supporting Scotland's economic growth. The key opportunities identified included welcoming more US investment in financial services, tech and renewable energy, championing quality Scottish products against the backdrop of tariffs and volatility, and showcasing Scotland's top-class cultural and higher education institutions. The First Minister's visit achieved each one of those objectives. The US is Scotland's second largest export market for goods and services after the EU, around 16.4% of our exports to the USA, totalling over £5 billion, and so engagement around economic opportunities with the USA is absolutely vital.
Michelle Thompson.
I thank the Deputy First Minister for that very fulsome response, and I was fortunate enough to attend Tartan Week celebrations to represent this Scottish Parliament, and I was very struck by the warmth that the Scottish culture, heritage, traditions and of course our products and services were met with. The DFM correctly highlights the value of our export market, but I wondered what assessment has been made of the specific economic value of celebrations such as not just Tartan Week, but promoting brand Scotland to the US and other wider global markets.
Deputy First Minister.
Well, I will confess to being slightly jealous of Michelle Thompson's trip over that period. Obviously, the Scottish Government, alongside other Brand Scotland partners, use these moments like Tartan Week to show Scotland's innovation and culture through events and media promotion. In terms of the economic analysis that is done, we obviously look at a number of different sources, always looking at how we can improve the data work that we do, which I know Michelle Thompson has a long-standing interest in. But that kind of work has helped to maintain Scotland as the second highest area for inward investment in the UK, after London in 9 of the past 10 years, according to EY. And the EY data is helpfully granular in terms of where those investors originate and the confidence that they have in Scotland.
And brief supplementary, Murdo Fraser.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The Scottish tourist sector is excited at the prospects for the future because there is an issue with people who might have planned to travel to the United States, now reluctant to do so. That gives opportunities for tourism here. At the Business and Parliament conference that we were both at on Friday, we heard from people involved in tourism raising some of the concerns they have about the handicaps being faced by that sector around taxation, around business rates, around short-term let licensing and around the visitor levy. So while tourism is optimistic about increased visitor numbers, margins are extremely tight in relation to hospitality. What specific help will the Scottish Government provide to those in that sector looking to expand?
Deputy First Minister.
Well, in terms of specific help, in this year's budget, we allocated an additional £2 million very specifically to Visit Scotland in order to ensure that, firstly, they increase footfall in terms of visitor numbers, that they support new markets when it comes to visitors coming to Scotland to maintain that international competitiveness. But then secondly, that money is also going towards supporting visitors to be spread right across Scotland rather than always concentrated in some of the most visited destinations, so that the whole country can benefit from some of the economic value that comes from tourism.
Thank you. I'm going to call question 4, despite the fact that Mr Whittle has just arrived. There are colleagues that want supplementaries on it. Brian Whittle, question 4.
For apologies to the Chamber Presiding Officer for my tardiness, to ask the Scottish Government whether it will provide an update on the delivery of the Ayrshire Growth Deal.
Deputy First Minister.
Well, the investment of over £100 million in the Ayrshire Growth Deal, matched by the UK Government, is expected to unlock private investment of around £300 million and deliver around 7,000 new jobs, transforming the local economy for the benefit of all of our people and places. Construction has just begun on phase 1 of the £14 million Great Harbour project. Governments have approved the outline business cases for the £23 million Ayrshire Manufacturing Investment Corridor and the £9 million Marine Tourism Programme, enabling progress to the next stage of those important projects. And I know this is of interest to Mr Whittle, work is continuing at pace on new projects that will support the aerospace sector at Prestwick.
Brian Whittle.
Can I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that response? And as she will know, last week I facilitated a meeting at the Prestwick Aerospace Cluster to discuss the potential of the Ayrshire Growth Deal to deliver at least 1,500 well-paid, highly skilled jobs in Ayrshire, in addition to the 3,500 proposed jobs by XLCC in North Ayrshire. Key factor is ensuring these major international companies commit to investing millions of pounds in Ayrshire in securing skilled workforces that these businesses need. Which is why everyone in the meeting was so concerned to hear that Ayrshire College is not only facing funding cuts, but its potential to support economic growth in Ayrshire is apparently being overlooked in favour of Scotland's cities. Can the Cabinet Secretary explain why Ayrshire College, and indeed Ayrshire more widely, seems to continually be an afterthought for the Scottish Government, and how does she propose to ensure that the Ayrshire Growth Deal is moved forward at pace to secure this vital inward investment?
Deputy First Minister.
Well, I believe that Ayrshire is the vanguard, is at the forefront of delivering economic opportunity, particularly in and around particular clusters like the Prestwick cluster. And I was sorry that I couldn't attend his meeting on the 23rd, which I know I'd communicated in advance. But I too will be in the diary engaging with some of the businesses that were in attendance in order to make clear that the Scottish Government supports the Prestwick cluster and the opportunities in and around aerospace and other things, other sectors. In terms of the college is key. I've had the privilege of visiting the college before. Skills is identified time and time again as one of the major challenges to achieving the business opportunities in the area, and I am very keen to work with the college and the sector more generally to ensure that we realise these opportunities and there are no impediments to doing that.
The brief supplementaries first. Kenneth Gibson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Over the next 5 years, Ayrshire will have a once-in-a-generation opportunity to consolidate and grow its globally competitive manufacturing footprint through XLCC Hunterston and our aerospace industry at Prestwick, boosting Scotland's wider supply chain. Having a highly skilled and motivated workforce is key to delivery of those objectives. So can the Deputy First Minister say how the Scottish Government will ensure that the skilled workforce essential to ensuring these ambitions is realised and will be available in the numbers required?
Deputy First Minister.
The member is absolutely right, and I had the privilege of supporting XLCC as they pitched and showcased what they are trying to achieve in the United Arab Emirates a couple of weeks ago. demonstrating the international interest in the progress that they are making, and he also talked about aerospace there. The workers are critical. Having met with a number of apprentices, there is obviously significant interest in working in these jobs. There is huge demand, and we are committed to working with Skills Development Scotland to oversee the apprenticeship programmes and administers funding to ensure that Ayrshire College can play a key role in meeting the demand and ensuring that there is a pipeline in place.
And briefly, Carol Mochan.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I recently sent a letter to Ayrshire councils seeking an update on the deal's delivery. The response acknowledged that progress on delivery had not been as originally envisaged and noted that at the halfway point of the programme's lifetime, only a small percentage of available investment had been realised. It also noted that in response to delays, partners in consultation with the Government had undertaken a review of the programme. Can the Government advise when the decision to review was made and what the outcome of the review is to ensure that my constituents can see the benefits and the potential of this economic growth?
Deputy First Minister.
The member will know partly why this happened due to a number of projects that didn't proceed as originally envisaged, but we are all keen to ensure that the new projects can be communicated clearly and quickly. Late last year, both governments approved the trajectory of a number of changes across the Ayrshire Deal Capital Programme, which should pave the way for greater pace of delivery. We are working with Ayrshire Council, and in the last few months I have personally convened a meeting with the Secretary of State for Scotland as well as senior representatives from the Council in order to really accelerate the pace of delivery here.
Thank you. Question 5, Finlay Carson.
To ask the Scottish Government what funding will be available to help infrastructure projects in the south west of Scotland.
Mr Richard Lockhead.
Each year, the Scottish Government provides funding for local government to deliver infrastructure to best meet their needs. Additionally, through the Borderlands deal, we will invest £85 million to drive regional economic growth. In the South West, this includes £16 million for the redevelopment of the Stranraer Marina, £4 million for the Dairy Innovation Centre and £20 million for the Deals Place programme to improve places to live and work across the region. We're also investing significant funding through the £2 billion Learning Estate Investment Programme, which will support the delivery of projects such as Dumfries High School.
Finlay Carson.
I thank the Minister for that answer. Regrettably, the amount of money spent on transport infrastructure in the south west corner has been non-existent in comparison to other areas, reported to be as little as 0.5% of the total Scottish infrastructure spend. As you will be aware, the century-old concrete bridge in my hometown Kirkcudbright has been ruled unsafe, leaving the town effectively split in two. I previously pressed the First Minister for additional funding to allow a new bridge to be constructed. However, it fell on deaf ears. This is despite the Scottish Government providing £40 million of funding to open the Destiny Bridge in his constituency, as well as £33 million towards the Keswick Bridge over the Bewley Firth and £12.5 million to build a bridge at Meikle in East Lothian to replace level crossing. Does the Minister agree with my constituents in what is now regarded as not the forgotten part of Scotland but the ignored part of Scotland, that this stinks horribly of double standards and further dismissal of the needs of the people of the south west of Scotland?
Despite the political points being made by the member, he does of course raise serious concerns over the Kirkcudbright Bridge, and I think it's ironic, given the list of investments I read out in my initial remarks, he's taking that particular stance, which is unfortunate given the many exciting investments taking place in the south of Scotland. The member mentioned the First Minister, and of course the First Minister recently replied to the member in relation to his concerns over the Kirkcudbright Bridge, and the First Minister was pleased to point out that Dumfries and Galloway Council's website states that the Kirkcudbright Bridge project is included within the Council's capital investment programme for the financial year 25-26. And clearly the Scottish Budget delivered additional capital expenditure for many parts of Scotland, so the issues are being addressed to the best of our ability, and I do hope that the Council is able to take that project forward sooner rather than later.
A couple of supplementaries. First, Emma Harper.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The recent visit by the Cabinet Secretary for Transport to the South West to hear from the campaigns seeking upgrades to the A75 and A77 was welcome. Can I ask the Minister how we will continue to ensure that the South West will get the infrastructure investment it needs, including support for the Kirkcudbright Bridge if possible, and engage with stakeholders across Dumfries and Galloway to fully maximise the economic potential of the South West, as the Scottish Government has done through its hugely welcome funding for Stranraer's Millennium Centre? And could I invite perhaps the Minister or the Deputy First Minister to come and see the difference that the funding has made for the community?
Minister.
Thank Emma Harper for her question. I obviously welcome the Cabinet Secretary for Transport's recent visit to the South West and her commitment to ongoing engagement with all stakeholders who are keen to see improvements to the roads quoted. On the wider investment planning, we of course as a government have to wait the outcome of the UK spending review in June to understand what the impacts will be for Scotland. Thereafter, the Scottish Government will publish a reset of its infrastructure investment pipeline, and that will set out investment plans for the coming years. In terms of the invite to the member's area, I regularly visit the south of Scotland, as do colleagues, and of course, if she wishes to write to us, we will hopefully respond positively to the invitation.
And Daniel Johnson.
The infrastructure investment is vital to economic growth in the south west of Scotland and indeed across the whole country, but we know cost overruns are one of the significant barriers to this. A recent Boston Consulting Group report on the cost of infrastructure across the UK highlighted that rail in the UK costs 3 times as much per kilometre as it does in France, and road almost twice as much. So can the Minister tell Parliament what analysis the Scottish Government is doing to look at why infrastructure costs more in Scotland and how we can tackle this so we can deliver more infrastructure to deliver growth across Scotland?
Minister.
The Scottish Budget, of course, sets out over £7 billion of capital spending to tackle issues ranging from child poverty to improved infrastructure across the country as well. And whether it's the Scottish Futures Trust or other organisations in Scotland, a lot of work is undertaken to ensure there's value for money. Clearly, there's always external factors out with our control that can influence costs. We've recently seen the inflation crisis, the energy crisis, and other factors that can make costs rise unexpectedly for many infrastructure projects, which has serious implications for the rest of our budgets as a government. But I can assure the member a lot of attention is given to that issue.
Okay, question 6, Ros McCall.
Thank you. To ask the Scottish Government what its response is to the latest quarterly economic indicator from the Scottish Chamber of Commerce and Fraser of Islander Institute, which reportedly shows a business landscape that's characterised by flatlining demand, stalling investment and labour cost pressures.
Minister.
The Scottish economy is resilient, with GDP growth strengthening in the 3 months to January. Low unemployment and strong earnings growth. However, we are already seeing the challenging impacts on businesses of the UK Government's decision to increase employer national insurance contributions. And the recent sharp rise in global economic uncertainty and volatility is, as we'd all expect, further weighing on the economic outlook. In responding to these challenges, we are continuing to work closely with Scottish businesses to ensure they are well positioned for investment to create jobs and grow the economy.
Ros McCall.
I thank the Minister for that response, but it is flatlining and it is going in reverse. The latest quarterly economic indicator found that business confidence has declined in all sectors in comparison to last year. Taxation is the #1 concern for businesses, and labour costs are leading to pressures in operating costs. However, it also highlighted that Scotland is losing out on major UK contracts and investment opportunities because we simply don't have the workforce to deliver. And this is a position that was backed up by CBI Scotland, who are requesting the Scottish Government commit to avoiding further tax divergence than the rest of the UK and more to be done on the Scottish skills shortage. So does the Minister agree with the Scottish Chamber of Commerce, Fraser of Islander Institute and CBI Scotland's assessment of the business landscape, and what steps will be taken to support Scotland's businesses?
Minister.
I agree with the member. There are, of course, many challenges facing the businesses in Scotland and indeed the wider Scottish economy at the moment. And as indicated in my previous answer, global uncertainty and other factors are certainly playing a role in that. And if she looks at the Fraser of Islander Institute Scottish Business Monitor for Q1 of this year, It says, in response to the increase of national insurance contributions, almost half of businesses surveyed have increased prices to pass on higher costs to customers, and almost half have reduced hiring or scaled back plans to increase employee headcount. So the member is right, taxation is a big issue, and NIC contributions brought forward by the UK Government are causing a real headache for the Scottish business community. And we, of course, have higher energy costs and other issues as well. So, as outlined in the recent budget passed by this Parliament, there's a lot of measures to help the business community in Scotland, not least over £300 million for enterprise companies. And, of course, there will be more opportunities for Parliament to have its say on these measures in the coming weeks.
Thank you. And briefly, Willie Rennie.
The Minister is keen to deflect onto others rather than accepting his own responsibility for the flat line in the economy here. Take housing policy. Home energy grants, but also housing policy itself, has resulted in a massive decline in investment. So what discussions has he had with his colleagues in other departments to make sure they change their ways to encourage investment?
Minister.
As the member may be aware, there has been a lot more positive feedback from the housing sector in Scotland in recent weeks in response to changes made by the Scottish Government. So this is an issue we take very, very seriously. Having a good housing supply in the country is vitally important for the future of our economy, including the business community. And we know that many parts of Scotland need more houses to ensure they can attract skilled workers who have somewhere to live in these particular areas. So there are a lot of developments now underway and a lot more positivity in that sector, notwithstanding some of the wider pressures facing the economy, which we referred to in previous answers.
Thank you. Question 7, Craig Hoy.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government regarding the implementation of its Green Industrial Strategy, what discussions it has had with the UK Government regarding the introduction of extended producer responsibility?
Deputy First Minister.
Well, we have been engaging with the UK and the devolved governments to improve the UK-wide scheme, whilst also exploring new stewardship measures through our own circular economy strategy and waste route map.
Craig Hoy.
I thank the Deputy First Minister for that answer. Last week I convened a meeting with industry stakeholders as part of the cross-party group on beer and pubs. They fear that APR is fast becoming a £1.1 billion tax and regulatory burden, which risks a range of sectors, including the glass industry, soft drinks, distilling, hospitality and retail, and which will ultimately hit consumers and result in increased inflation. There is still no real clarity as to how much the producers will ultimately pay for EPR waste, the fees for which are vastly more expensive than other countries such as Ireland, nor how councils will secure the revenues generated by it. So will the Minister work urgently with other Scottish ministers and the Scottish Government, which form part of the four-nation working group on EPR, to ensure that these very, very real concerns are heard by DEFRA and the scheme administrators?
Deputy First Minister.
I'm very happy to make that commitment to the member and also to the stakeholders that he referenced, to say that we will listen carefully to the comments that they make and also ensure that those are fed back to the UK Government. And I'm more than happy. I know that Craig Hoy has asked a number of PQs over recent weeks around EPR schemes, but I'd be more than happy to look closely at all the specific issues and see what progress can be made on each particular element.
Okay, a very brief supplementary, Jackie Dunbar.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Acting along the principle of the polluter pays is a key part of enabling a just transition for communities across Scotland through effective waste management and reduction. So can the Deputy First Minister say any more about the Scottish Government's work to achieve this, of course in partnership with Zero Waste Scotland?
As briefly as possible, Deputy First Minister.
Well, the polluter pays principle is all about ensuring producers take greater responsibility for waste that they create, and the introduction of EPR for packaging is intended to shift costs from local authorities to producers, generating an estimated £160 million every year. But we have to make sure that we do take people with us, and we will consult and listen to stakeholders carefully whilst raising those issues with the UK Government, as committed to in my earlier answer.
Thank you. In question 8, Audrey Nicholl.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what engagement it's had with stakeholders regarding the tall ships races Aberdeen 2025.
Minister.
I'm delighted that the Scottish Government was able to provide the Tall Ship Races Aberdeen 2025 with financial support via Visit Scotland, with an award of almost £160,000 to support event delivery costs. And Visit Scotland staff are represented in the various stakeholder groups established to plan and organise the event, including a local organising committee and event coordination group. And the Tall Ships Races feature prominently in Visit Scotland's current and ongoing marketing campaign activity.
Audrey Nicholl.
Minister for his response. The Tall Ships Races is set to be a major event for Aberdeen and the North East, with projections of around 400,000 visitors and an estimated £30 million boost to the local economy. The event will support businesses across hospitality, retail, tourism and wider community engagement, such as sail training for young people. So hosting the Tall Ships will also enhance Aberdeen's international reputation as a vibrant, welcoming city and help secure a lasting legacy for major events. So can the Minister further outline how the Scottish Government is promoting Scotland's reputation as a leading events destination, maximising the opportunities presented by events like the Tall Ships Races that will ensure a lasting positive impact on the region and across Scotland?
Minister.
The member outlines very well the massive benefits for Aberdeen and the North East of Scotland from this really exciting event, and I pay tribute to all the people who have played a role in working to make this going to be such a success. And of course, it's a big economic benefit for the area as well. As Minister, I want to play my role to maintain Scotland's position as a leading events destination. So we do a lot to enhance Scotland's reputation as the perfect stage for events. We work alongside the partners, implement the refreshed national event strategy. And of course, Scotland is the place to be in the coming years. We've got the Tall Ships event in Aberdeen. We've got the 2025 Orkney International Island Games. We've got the 2026 Commonwealth Games. We've got the 2027 Tour de France Grand Depart. And we've got UEFA Euro 2028. So the next 3 years, including the exciting event in Aberdeen, are really exciting for the whole of the country.
Thank you. That concludes portfolio questions on Deputy First Minister responsibilities, economy and Gaelic. There will be a brief pause before we move to the next item to allow front benches to change. And the next portfolio is Finance and Local Government. As ever, members wishing to ask a supplementary question should press the requested beep buttons during the relevant question. I call question number 1, Rona Mackay.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government how much Eastern Bartonshire Council has spent on PFI contracts in the last year.
Minister Ivan McKee.
In 2024-25, Eastern Bartonshire Council paid £19.6 million in unitary charges for its school's PFI contract. This contract's procurement began in 2005 and the capital value of the project was £134 million. However, by the time the PFI contract concludes in 2038-39, the Council will have paid in excess of £550 million towards the PFI.
Rona Mackay.
I thank the Minister for the answer. Does the Minister agree with me that Labour's PFI legacies and the national insurance hike, a tax on jobs, is placing a burden on councils throughout Scotland?
Absolutely.
Minister.
Yes, of course I do, and that is why in this year's budget we provided local government in Scotland with one of the largest increases in funding in recent times in order to help lessen the burden. In relation to PFI, we have always made clear that this has not delivered best value for the taxpayer, and that is why we brought it to an end. We are, of course, however, still paying for the legacy of Labour's mistakes.
And supplementary, Pam Gosling.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The SNP benches are so keen to point out their contentions with the PFI contracts, stay conventionally quiet about their party's own repeated historic use of NPD contracts. Audit Scotland found that these NPD contracts, which are a type of PFI scheme, turn out significantly more expensive to the taxpayers than using traditional forms of government project financing. Therefore, can I ask the Minister, tell us what the current financial burden of NPD contracts to councils across my region of West Scotland is?
Minister.
The first point to make out is Pam Goswell is absolutely right. It's the cheapest way to fund these projects is for governments to borrow. But of course, Scotland has strict limits on how much it can borrow due to the policies of the UK government. And where we are a normal, independent country, we would be able to borrow at those low rates to fund capital projects. But with regards to the non-profit distribution programme, the key difference, of course, between those programmes and traditional PFIs championed by both the Conservative and Labour parties is that NPD programmes are profit-capped and profit-sharing, and those contracts provide greater transparency, more flexibility than PFI, and, of course, are considerably cheaper than PFI.
Question 2, Maggie Chapman, who joins us remotely.
Thank you. Aberdeenshire Council regarding the reported financial pressures that it is experiencing.
Cabinet Secretary Shona Robertson.
Ministers and officials meet with COSLA and individual local authorities on a regular basis to ensure local government have the capacity and resources required to continue providing communities across Scotland with the high-quality frontline services that they expect and deserve.
Maggie Chapman.
Tomorrow, people will gather in Fraserburgh to discuss how to prevent cuts at day centres for disabled people proposed by the Council. The proposals would see provision of daycare limited to severely disabled people after redefining what counts as severely disabled to reduce eligibility. Transport provision and funding for disabled people to physically get to the daycare centres might be cut too, as might fees for daycare centre places being increased. These proposals and too many others like them will have devastating effects on the lives of disabled people and their carers. Other services, including the stretched NHS, will have to pick up the pieces. What assurances can the Cabinet Secretary give to disabled people, their carers and others concerned about these proposals, as well as those who will be left to pick up the pieces? Cabinet Secretary.
Well, let me first of all say that I understand Maggie Chapman's concern and understand and appreciate the value of day centres and other services for disabled people. Of course, these are decisions that Aberdeenshire Council is proposing, but I would certainly urge them to listen to the representations that Maggie Chapman described. And of course, we have ensured that Aberdeenshire Council is receiving an extra £42 million, or an additional 7.2% compared to 24-25. Taken together by their increase in council tax, that's an additional £58.1 million to support frontline services in 2025-26. So I certainly hope, as Maggie Chapman has alluded to, that the council will listen to those local representations.
And briefly, Karen Annan.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I welcome that this year's Scottish Budget provides an increase of over 7% in funding for Aberdeenshire Council. Can the Minister outline how this additional funding should help alleviate financial pressures for the local authority and provide additional opportunities so that they can improve our communities as a result?
As briefly as possible, Cabinet Secretary.
Well, of course, councils and their employees play a vital role in communities across Scotland, which is why the Scottish Government has made available record funding this year. And while I recognise that significant challenges remain across the whole of the public sector, I expect the additional funding will allow Aberdeenshire Council and other councils to invest in effective, efficient and sustainable local services.
Question 3, Jamie Halker-Johnson.
To ask the Scottish Government whether it will provide an update on any discussions it has had with the tourism sector and other stakeholders regarding amending the Visitor Levy Scotland Act 2024.
Minister.
The Scottish Government receives regular input from the tourism sector regarding the visitor levy, and we're very well aware of their concerns with regards to particular aspects of the levy. Both myself and indeed the First Minister spoke and answered questions at the Scottish Tourism Alliance Business Breakfast in March of this year, when the visitor levy was a subject of discussion, and I will be meeting with representatives of the Scottish Tourism Alliance and the Association of Scotland Self-Caterers in the next couple of weeks to discuss these matters further.
Jamie Halker-Johnson.
Well, while the Scottish Government continues to prevaricate, councils across Scotland are pushing ahead with consultations on implementing the new tax. But if Scottish ministers really are engaging in good faith with tourism stakeholders and genuinely considering amending the visitor levy, then people are being asked to have their say on a levy that they have no idea what the final form might be. So can I ask the Minister if the SNP is committed to pushing ahead with this new tax, one which many of us continue to oppose, will he at least consider calls from the tourism sector, including the Scottish Tourism Alliance, that implementation is paused for at least 6 months to allow better time to engage with the sector on potential improvements, such as introducing a flat fee and reducing further burdens on tourism businesses by removing their role in collecting the new tax?
Minister.
As I already said, we continue to engage with the sector, but it's also with regard to the visitor levy, but it's also important to recognise the levy raises significant amounts of money for local government potentially and certain councils in particular, and for members on those benches to complain that local government doesn't have enough funds on the one hand, but then to complain when we take forward proposals to increase their funding, it doesn't really stack up. But as I said, we are engaging in good faith with the sector to explore how we can take forward the visitor levy and address some of the challenges that they've brought before us.
A brief supplementary, Colin Beattie.
Can the Minister please outline what positive conversations the Scottish Government has had with local authorities who plan to introduce a visitor levy in the near future, and how they will encourage revenue from the levy to be reinvested in the area's visitor economy?
If possible, Minister.
Yeah, the Scottish Government has had and is having a range of discussions with stakeholders around implementation of the Visitor Levy Act. And that requires that the objectives of a visitor levy scheme must relate to developing, supporting or sustaining facilities or services which are substantially for or used by persons visiting the scheme area. A measure that's welcome not just by local authorities but by the business community as well. And while it's for local authorities to determine what they might reinvest this additional revenue in, that also requires them to measure and report on the achievement of those objectives and publish an annual report which would include setting out how much revenue has been collected and how it has been used, in particular to support the visitor economy.
And very briefly, Daniel Johnson.
Well, Deputy Presiding Officer, can the Minister clarify, is the Government considering delaying the introduction of the visitor levy, and does that include a change to the regulations?
Minister.
The visitor levy is moving forward, and the member will know that in Edinburgh steps are well advanced to take forward the implementation of a levy in the middle part of next year. We are discussing with a range of stakeholders, as I said, to understand the challenges that the levy is putting potentially, or the challenges they see that putting on the sector, and we're very keen to engage with them to explore what action may be possible in order to mitigate those challenges wherever we can, and that discussion also continues with a whole range of local authorities as well.
Question 4 has been withdrawn. Question 5, Gordon MacDonald.
To ask the Scottish Government what recent discussions it has had with the City of Edinburgh Council regarding the progress of the Edinburgh City Plan 2040.
Minister.
City Plan 2040 will be the City of Edinburgh Council's next local development plan, which is at a very early stage in its preparation, and we've not discussed that with the Council. However, on the 25th of March this year, I met with the City of Edinburgh Council's planning convener and head of planning to discuss matters linked to the current Edinburgh City Plan 2030. And at that meeting, we discussed guidance on developer contributions and infrastructure levy and future housing delivery in Granton and West Edinburgh.
Gordon MacDonald.
I thank the Minister for that answer. Many community organisations across the city, including the Wester Hailes Community Trust in my constituency of Edinburgh Pentlands, have produced local place plans for the deadline of August this year at great time and expense. Can the Minister advise what responsibility lies with the local authority to take into consideration these local place plans, which are the aspirations of the local community?
Minister.
Local place plans are a positive way for communities to have a stronger voice in how they want to see their areas developed, and I would commend the communities and the members' constituents who are producing those local plans for doing so. Planning authorities are required by law to take into account any registered local place plan when they're preparing a local development plan, and it's for planning authorities to determine what weight and consideration to give to elements within a local place plan, but I would of course encourage them to do so, and I'm happy to provide the member and indeed any other member with a link to guidance published for communities and planning authorities on local development planning and on local place plans that provide further helpful information.
Question 6, Jackie Bailey, who joins us remotely.
To ask the Scottish Government what discussions the Finance Secretary has had with ministerial colleagues regarding a different model for allocating funding to integrated joint boards in light of a recent Accounts Commission report highlighting the unsustainable gaps in their finances.
Minister.
We sympathise with the pressures facing the social care sector and are working to understand the current financial viability picture. However, health and social care services were formally integrated through the Public Bodies Joint Work in Scotland Act 2014. This sets in law the requirement for local authorities and health boards to work together and create a health and social care partnership to deliver services. IGBs must receive their delegated budgets via these partners, as direct allocations to IGBs are not possible under the 2014 Act. And so under current legislation, a different funding model is currently not possible.
Jackie Bailey.
The Accounts Commission reported a £560 million deficit in the budgets of IJBs, which is having a hugely damaging impact on some of the most vulnerable people needing social care. Now, across Scotland, cuts are being made. My own constituency, community link workers are being removed. Work Connect, a project that provides training and work opportunities for those with learning disabilities, is being closed. Money in the IJB's reserves was actually clawed back by the SNP Scottish Government, so they are no longer able to fund these critical projects. So what comfort can the Minister offer to those most vulnerable people in our society, losing their social care support because of the actions of his government?
Minister.
Well, I have to make it very clear to the member, as she knows fine well, that, as I said in my earlier answer, funding for IGBs comes directly through health boards and local government in partnership. That is the whole point of the integration of health and social care services in the 2014 Act. And you shall also know very well that this government has provided record funding this year to both the health boards and to local government to enable them to in turn fund IGBs to provide the very services that she talks about in her question. And they will continue to engage with partners to understand how his government can continue to support the funding of IGBs, as I said, as the Act requires us to do, through health boards and local government.
Thank you. I've got a lot of interest in supplementaries. I'll try to get everybody in, but the questions will need to be brief, as indeed will the answers. Question for supplementary, Stuart McMillan.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Can the Minister advise how much the Scottish Government has increased investment in health and social care integration since 2021-2022? Minister.
The 2025-26 budget includes almost £2.2 billion for social care and integration. This means that since 2021-22, the Scottish Government has increased social care investment by almost £1.2 billion, increasing our commitment to exceeding our commitment to increase funding by 25% by over £350 million.
Craig Hoy.
IGBs clearly face a cash crisis in Scotland. In evidence to the Finance Committee yesterday, the Scottish Fiscal Commission warned of Scotland's health and social care demographic budget time bomb. It warned of an ageing population that means a higher number of people being eligible under the current criteria and requiring more care and thus more public spending. It similarly warned on health, and I quote, "The growth in health spending shown in our projections is likely to be unsustainable." Taken alongside record projected increase in welfare spending, the whole of this government's budget appears to be unsustainable. What is the government's solution to the sustainability challenge it faces?
Minister. Wow, I don't know where to start with that. So not only do the Tories want us to cut tax and have less money available to spend, they're also complaining because the projections for health spending are increasing, and we've kept pace with those increases in health spending by providing health boards and indeed local authorities to in turn fund IGBs with record amounts of funding to do just that, and done all that while continuing to balance our budget. Of course, there are longer-term challenges. We are addressing those through our Fiscal Sustainability Delivery Plan and our public service reform activity that we are taking forward. This government will continue to provide record funding to health and social care, and to do so whilst balancing our budget.
Patrick Harvey.
The Government has been blowing hot and cold on this a bit. Today we've heard very little recognition of the human impact that IJB cuts are having, and Neil Gray has also brushed off any suggestion that the government has a responsibility here. Yet just last month, the First Minister, in responding to FMQs, said there will need to be a wider conversation between the government and the IJB to address the concerns that have been properly put to me by members today, and his tone was very open. Does the government recognise that there would be a broad cross-party welcome if the government was to accept that responsibility for taking forward that wider conversation the First Minister promised? Will it happen?
Minister.
Thank Patrick Harvey for that question. I mean, just to let him know that the activity that is happening in this space, and the government is very much engaged in these discussions. In February of this year, the Cabinet Secretary for Health, along with representatives from COSLA, invited Solace, Chief Officers, Scottish Care and a coalition of care and support providers to a round table to discuss the very issue. He talks about the financial viability of the social care sector. Through this, a response group for financial viability was commissioned to further explore the risks and potential mitigations for the sector. The Minister for Social Care met with IGB chairs, chief officers and CFOs from all IGBs in Scotland in April of this year to discuss those financial challenges. This follows on from a meeting she had in March. So we are continuing to engage with the sector. We understand the challenges they face, as outlined in my previous answer. We, as I said, recognise that the funding routes are through health boards and local authorities who have received in turn record funding, but we do recognise the impact that IGB performance has on local communities, and will continue to engage proactively with the sector and others to be able to address these challenges.
And very briefly, Willie Rennie.
The government do love roundtables and response groups as a response to any particular crisis. And it is a crisis because people are desperate for social care, but because of Fife's £37 million overspend last year, services were slashed and people suffered. So when is the government going to get a grip of this problem? Because it's happening year after year after year.
Minister.
As already indicated, we are providing record funding to health boards and to local authorities, who in turn have responsibility to fund IJBs. We are also, as I said, engaging with the sector, and I would call it engagement. He can call it what he likes, but at the end of the day, that engagement is hugely important. If we weren't engaging, I'm sure Mr Rennie would be one of the first to complain that we weren't having those roundtables and other discussions to move this challenge forward. So we are having that engagement. We are constructively working with partners to resolve this issue, but as I said earlier, we have also provided record funding to health boards and local government to in turn fund IJBs.
Question 7, Sue Webber.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what engagement it has had with the City of Edinburgh Council regarding its allocated budget.
Cabinet Secretary.
The Scottish Government routinely engages with COSLA and individual local authorities to cover a range of topics, including current and future budgets.
Sue Webber.
Thank you for that very succinct answer, Cabinet Secretary. Last week at Edinburgh's Housing Committee, housing allocations were frozen, and only those with gold priority will be considered for a new council home. All others looking to move home within the city will need to wait even longer. Edinburgh receives around a 6% share of the affordable housing budget using a COSLA-based formula that disadvantages the capital. Meanwhile, the acquisitions budget is allocated based on need, meaning Edinburgh receives over a third. Will the Cabinet Secretary urgently review the funding formula to ensure Edinburgh gets its fair and needed share of monies?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, first of all, let me say that, of course, the City of Edinburgh has, as other local authorities, have received extra funding, so an extra £60 million or an additional 5.9% compared to 2024-25, and of course in capital funding they'll receive an extra, they'll receive £73.9 million, an extra £8.1 million. Now, Sue Webber in many ways answered the question herself because she described it as a COSLA-based funding formula. That funding formula is a needs-based formula agreed with COSLA on behalf of 32 local authorities each year. I think if I was to step in and disregard the COSLA agreement on behalf of 32 local authorities, we would have people popping up across this chamber to criticise me for doing so. And I would just point out to Sue Webber that she cannot support £1 billion of unfunded tax cuts at the same time as calling for more money for Edinburgh Council or anyone else.
And very, very briefly, Sarah Boyack.
Is the Cabinet Secretary aware of the cuts being made to dozens of vital charities by the Edinburgh Integrated Joint Board, meaning Edinburgh Council is now having to step in to fund those organisations to keep people well and healthy, given the massive pressures NHS Lothian is under and our growing population?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, look, I can say to Sarah Boyack that, of course, we understand the pressures on public services. Those are pressures felt across these islands because of the demographic challenges that we all understand. What this government has done, however, is to give record levels of investment to both local government, over £15 billion, and to the NHS and social care, £21 billion, record levels of funding. And we expect the councils and the health service to make sure that they are funding local services adequately, including third sector organisations who, of course, do a very, very important job.
Thank you. And question 8, Bob Doris.
To ask the Scottish Government whether it will provide an update on the potential impact of on Scotland's public finances as a result of the UK Government increasing employer national insurance contributions.
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, the Labour UK Government's hike in employer national insurance contributions adds over £700 million in costs to the delivery of public services such as the NHS, schools, local government, universities, social care providers and a wide range of third sector organisations. And despite our calls for full reimbursement, it is clear that the support to meet these costs from the UK Government will fall over £400 million short of what is required.
Bob Doris.
I'm sure the Cabinet Secretary will share my concerns that Labour's brutal employer national insurance increase may risk the financial viability of some businesses and, in doing so, compound the impact on Scotland's public finances. Does the Cabinet Secretary agree with me that the UK Government must take responsibility for this and appropriately support businesses across Scotland facing such very specific UK-created pressures?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, absolutely. In recognition of its damaging implications for businesses, public services and communities, the Scottish Government has called on the UK Government to reverse this increase. And, of course, it's the opportunity costs. It's the opportunity costs that could provide additional funding that Sarah Boyack was calling for, or additional funding for local authorities or the health service. This is an opportunity cost that is costing public services and money that's going straight back to the Treasury, and that is totally unacceptable.
Thank you. That concludes portfolio questions on finance and local government. There will be a brief pause before we move to the next item of business to allow front benches to change.